Hey there, and welcome to another edition of the Solar Panel. This is a midweek preview show. We are previewing the Portland Trailblazers versus the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday night. The Blazers come into town with currently a 5-5 record on the season. They've actually graded out better than that 5-5 record. So I got some questions to ask. We have a special guest on here today. His name is Danny Marang. He is with a number of different streaming and recording and writing outlets, based mostly on Blazers Edge. That's where I
Yep.
picked up on Danny. Danny, welcome to the show today.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. Yeah, the Blazers will. You said as far as their ratings go and how they stack up, it depends on the night. It depends on the night because they've won by 30 and they've lost by 30, and the Suns are familiar with one of the 30-point wins. So
Exactly. Exactly. There's been a lot of those weird games early in the season. Every
yeah.
early in the season, we always forget because by the end of the season, it's so long ago. But
hmm
every early season is kind of up and down. So anyway, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. At the end of the show, we'll tell everyone where to find you.
Oh, no
I
worries.
love Blazers Edge. That's the base on here. As Bright Side of the Sun is my website.
hmm
Blazers Edge is the sister or brother site for SBNation. You guys do incredible work over there. And in my opinion, the Blazers are the funnest West opponent that we've got. Nobody hates the Blazers. We really just don't hate ever since the 2010 playoffs, but we just don't hate the Blazers. That was actually more fun than not. I don't know if
Yeah.
you probably weren't old enough to remember that,
Oh,
Danny, but
I'm older than you think. I'm 37.
all
I've
right.
been
Were you
I've
around
been
for the
coming.
2010
Oh,
playoffs,
oh
the
yeah.
Suns Blazers?
I had season tickets. My family moved. I'm an LA guy who moved to Portland.
There
Hilariously,
you go. Okay.
my family had season tickets in Portland since '91. So,
Oh,
um,
right on. So
yeah,
you were right there.
long time suffering Blazers fan.
Yeah, man. I keep trying not to make the correlation between Brandon Roy and Devin Booker because I don't want to ruin Devin Booker because of what
Hmm.
happened to Brandon Roy physically. It's
Yeah,
bad karma and all that, but they're so similar.
they
But
are. I
anyway,
actually made
yeah,
that exact same. Everybody wants to say Book is Kobe. He's Kobe. No, he's not.
he's
He's
not.
Brandon Roy. He plays at his own speed, his own cadence. He gets guys
Hmm.
off rhythm. And he just murders you from the mid range. It's
Yeah,
Brandon. It's Brandon Roy with a little less explosion. That's basically what Book is, which is a
yeah.
hell of a player.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, well, good. Yeah, so back 2010, those who've been around that long, we had a bit of a tiff between Blazers Edge and Bright Side of the Sun
hmm
during those 2 weeks, but that was even then that was all in good fun. So you guys are one of my favorite opponents. So we're going to preview Suns Blazers. It's Wednesday night. The Suns have played the Blazers once this year. It was a 30-point loss to the Blazers that the Suns experienced. One of the Suns' three losses this year. They avenged the Kings loss just last night
hmm
on Monday night, and now they're going to try to avenge the Blazers loss. So we're going to go through some questions on how the Blazers have done, because folks who've only seen that version of the Blazers that Saturday night in Game 3, the night after the emotional win over the Lakers
hmm
that everyone's getting these days. That
Everybody's
that
getting
night
those.
against the Blazers looked unstoppable. So we're going to ask a few questions, though.
hmm
They are 5-5 on the year, as Danny says. Some big wins, some big losses. The first question I've got for you: what's up with Dame?
So if you have watched beyond that one game, it's pretty evident he's not physically right. He has pushed back on limiting him that much, but he hasn't been able to turn a corner and get by Andre Drummond, let alone get by a premier, perimeter defender at this point. Um, his floor game has been the best of his career. There's no doubt about that. He's been fantastic as far as setting guys up, but he is lacking the explosion. The Damian Lillard right to left split,
Mm-hmm.
dribble and splitting the double team and getting downhill and just breaking defenses down hasn't really been there. The other night against the Lakers, he pulled up from 40 feet for the first time this year. And it was the first time he took a deep three. It was like, oh, that looked like he had a
Is
little
it
bit of
the
strength in that.
abdominal thing that he
Yeah,
was
it's
dealing
still
with?
there. Yeah, he
Okay.
re-aggravated it in Cleveland. He got
Wow.
smacked to the ground. It's never going to go away until he gets surgery. That much
Wow.
is clear. So Because he's been dealing with that for about 5-6 years, and
So
it flares up every
do you
year.
would he have had surgery if there was a normal off season, but since this was only 2 months,
I had
he
heard that
didn't?
they
Or?
got very close to making that decision after the Olympics, but the recovery time was just going to be too much for him to get ready to go in the
Wow.
season. So, but yeah, he has battled through it every year basically for the last 5-6 years. So it's nothing new. But everybody's like, oh no, it's just he's learning a new system. Guys, he didn't forget how to play basketball. He's not just in a shooting slump. He just
Yeah.
can't get by anybody.
It's not like Terry Stotts was the Dame Lillard muse. I think
Yeah, I mean, don't get
Dame
me
is his
wrong.
own muse.
He put Dame in spots to get crazy buckets, but it's not it's not just a shooting slump, because if you watch him and not only like what he's doing, it's how he's doing it. This is a guy who I have watched Damian Lillard warm up since his rookie year. This is a guy who pulls up from 35 more effortlessly than anybody in NBA history. The dude is strong. He's strong with a K, strong. I mean, he pulls up and it looks like he just flicks his wrist. He's just that strong. But watching him over the last couple of weeks, you can see him. He's got to kind of force and grunt a deep three out, and it doesn't quite look right. And when he gets into that dribble pull up that you're used to him taking, where it's so graceful and so explosive, you can see him kind of muscle it up. So he's kind of fighting through that. He had a nice game against the Lakers, but everybody has a nice game against the Lakers. So you're still trying to figure out which
Everyone's
one this
having
one
fun
is
against the Lakers. I mean, they're trying to lose to the worst teams in the NBA. Yeah. So just for folks who haven't been really paying attention, you assume Dame is the same Dame. He's been shooting only 35% from the field this year, 24% on threes. I mean, it's just crazy bad. He is setting a career high so far in assists per game at 8.5.
He's taking very good care of the ball.
Yeah. You're
So
right. And his turnovers are the lowest in half a decade at 2.6 and almost lowest of his career.
So you're getting two different versions. Like he's definitely trying new things with Chauncey at the helm, trying to set guys up. But I think more of it has to do with the fact that he's not physically right than it is with him not or leaning into the new system quite as much.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to Chauncey. So let's talk about so Dame isn't Dame, but he's still doing pretty well. He's getting his 20 points. He's getting 8.5 assists a game and all that. Tell us about Chauncey Billups. What do you think so far of him as a head coach?
So far, it's been okay. And that was the thing, is that the move was going to happen. And so
the move, you mean
moving on from Terry Stotts?
Okay.
I mean, we knew basically January, February that barring a mythical run in the playoffs that Terry was going to be gone. So everybody was kind of prepared for that in that sense. But at the same time, I think a lot of people have said that if they just change the coach, it's going to fix a lot of things. Well, it turns out that that's not necessarily true. So
sometimes it's the roster, huh?
Yeah, sometimes it is the product of the roster, as Neil O'Shea said in the offseason. But I like what Chauncey has done so far. He has changed up a few things. There are a few more movement sets they've put in. They are trying to move Dame off the ball. Part of that is Dame maybe not being physically right enough to move off the ball as well as he wants to. Part of it is I think as much as Dame says he wants to, he still wants the ball in his hands. So I think there's a fighting against that from a guy who's basically been doing the same thing for almost 10 years. It's hard to change the Tiger stripes. Lineup wise, what I have really liked with Chauncey is that he has been willing to try things. And like try things, I mean, going with a 4-guard lineup. They have run out Dame, CJ, Anthony Simons, and Norman Powell with Yusuf Nurkic to close out games. Now,
you could say those are the 4 best players this year.
There you go. That's part of what this is that Chauncey's going, listen, I'd like to put more guys out there that have more size, but my 4 best players right now are those 4 guys. So, but again, he's experimenting with some things. He's tried some bigger lineups. Their bench unit, which is Simons, Nasir Little, Larry Nance Jr., and Cody Zeller, plus Damian Lillard, has one of the best net ratings in the entire league, and they are shooting the lights out and stopping teams. It's absolutely bonkers how good they've been. So Chauncey's relied on that a fair amount. He's ridden the hot hand a little bit more, particularly with Anthony Simons. He's just trying to find ways to get him on the floor. So I like that Chauncey has coached up maybe a little bit more on feel, which I think is okay to do with a new coach because the established pecking order isn't quite as clear as far as what minutes and what rotations are going to be like.
He doesn't know who to trust beyond his 2 stars.
Exactly. And so I think he's leaving it pretty open ended, which I think if you're gonna tell guys, and he did, he told Anthony Simons, Norman Powell, Yusuf Nurkic, Robert Covington that, hey, we're gonna get you more looks, we're gonna get you more shots, we're gonna get you more involved. That's a very, very difficult thing to deliver on, to get that many more
Mhm.
people involved when you've got that much high usage between
Yeah,
Reed
there's
and
only so
CJ.
many there's only so many shots in a game.
Yeah,
You can't get
so
everyone more involved.
it's definitely it's been okay. I've questioned some of the rotation stuff, but nothing crazy. And again, I've said from the jump, I'm going to give him 20 games before I really go too deep into, oh, Chauncey doesn't do this. I mean,
Oh,
like
heck, at least.
at bare minimum. So,
Coaching at any level in any sport is basically the same, and you need some time to adjust and figure out
mhm,
not only your roster, but also your abilities as a coach
mhm,
and calling the right things. I mean, locals here in Arizona, we've got the Arizona Cardinals in the NFL. Cliff Kingsbury is the head
yeah,
coach. He comes in. He had a losing record in college, yet he gets a head coaching job. And for 2 years, people have been calling for his head because he makes just like he makes he would make some calls that just weren't right for the game. Right,
mm,
he would make some dumb calls, and people are questioning his ability to be a head coach in the league and all this, and now he's
not so
potentially
much.
coach of the year in for the Cardinals because he's and they just won a game. I'm sorry about the to Suns fans who don't pay attention to the Cardinals, but you missed a great game this weekend where all their top four skill players were out and they still pantsed the other team. So, and I use pantsed in a very Robert Sarver reference. But anyway, they pantsed the other team, and that was really good. And that just shows he's become a really good coach. So back to Chauncey Billups with the Blazers. You're not going to see the best of Chauncey Billups
No.
this year, but you are going to see a guy who's going to fight and grind. And Chris Paul is one of those dudes who says he's very happy to see Chauncey Billups get a head coaching job. He and his point guard mastermind brethren. He's the last of the group to retire. Jason Kidd now has a head coaching job. Chauncey Billups has a head
Mhm.
coaching job, and Chris Paul now is going to eventually retire and probably become a head coach. So Chauncey, starting out as a rookie, you think so far he's doing things that aren't making you guys pull your hair out.
No, no, and that's the thing is that I think he was given a little bit more tools to work with, particularly with Larry Nance Jr. and Cody Zeller. You can do a few more things than you could last year with Ennis Cantor
Defensively, anyway.
and Carmelo Anthony. Yes, for sure. Anthony Simon stepping in and being a 6-man of the year candidate, not a finalist. Listen, Harrow's running away with that award as far as
Yeah.
this year is concerned right now. But Anthony's going to get legitimate votes. He'll probably finish 4th or 5th in the balloting, and that's. I mean, to go from what he was last year, which was kind of hit or miss, to being a guy you can count on for 15 a night or a guy who can get you 20 and a quarter. He's that kind of player. Um, that allows Chauncey to be a little bit more aggressive in some of the things that he does on both ends.
Yeah, so let's talk about Anthony Simons and Nasir Little were
Mhm.
basically afterthoughts the last couple of years in Terry Stotts' team from afar. I don't know if you agree internally, but from
For the most
afar.
part, yeah.
And then this year, they're two of your best bench players. So how have they developed? Do you think it's as much the opportunity Chauncey's given them, or is it that they've really gotten better as players?
So Ant's kind of been like my adult son since he came in the league, and he was, just wet behind the ears. He came in and did the show right after he got drafted,
Yeah,
and he
never
showed up
did
with his.
college at all.
No, he played at IMG. He showed up with his
Mm,
parents and his agent at the studio, and it was like, oh, this is cute.
mm,
Great family, just great kid, but just shy as can be. And my co-host at the time, I can't remember what it was. We played some game, and as soon as it got competitive, he got him out of his shell, and it was like, oh, there it is. There's the guy that they're talking about. He has had confidence issues, or had confidence issues, just trying to understand like where he fits in. Talent wise, nobody has questioned the talent within that organization. Uh,
mm.
Talking to guys around the team, he's got an incredible shot creation platform. Just can hit pull up threes like they're nothing. Can, right, left, behind the back, step back, pull, and just it looks effortless. There's just natural scoring instinct. He was one of the best catch and shoot 3-point shooters in the NBA last year, and flat out, he was one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA last year. That's in his bag. The development has been in his head. It's, hey, listen, my shot diet last year was basically 80% threes. I need to get 2 feet in the paint, because remember, this guy's a slam dunk champion. He's got a 46-inch vertical. He is stupidly athletic. But in talking to him over the years, he says, I asked him about, well, why don't you go to the rim as much? He's like, I've never had to. I could pull from anywhere I wanted to. And so it's been a mental change for him. And he worked with Phil Beckner, who was Damian Lillard's trainer this last year. And he just committed to it. Like, it just, the switch flipped as far as like what it takes to be a true dyed-in-the-wool NBA killer. And he put on a little bit of size, got a little bit thicker, got his man body, and his confidence just soared.
Yeah, so far, man, he just for folks again, for folks and locals aren't paying attention, in 10 games this year, he's basically doubled his scoring output on only about 50% more minutes. So he's gone from 17 to 23 minutes, but he's doubled his scoring. His other numbers are fairly similar. It's just that he's putting up more shots. He's putting up 11 shots a game versus 6.3 a game last year. Again, in 50% fewer minutes, but half. So he's really stepped up his role on the team this year.
Shooting basically
defensively,
50,
is he
40,
holding
90.
up? Yeah, 50, 40, 90 shooting, exactly, just about. And that was, he was good last year. Actually, no, he's by far career high on overall field goal percentage, which means his 2-point makes are way up, because his 3 points, he was 42% last year and 41 this year. So defensively, does he hold up?
He's better. He's, again, an explosive athlete with a lot of length. He just didn't have the defensive IQ really. And he's learning. I would say he's less of a liability than Dame, in the sense that because because of his frame, he doesn't really get stuck on picks as easy. Dame's like, trying to screen a refrigerator. It's a lot easier to screen him than it is Ant. Ant flips his hips and he can get over screens a lot easier. He's a lot more slithery. I think the effort is there more consistently. He'll make more, I think, young guy mistakes defensively, but he'll get caught maybe ball watching and get backdoored. But for the most part, he's probably taken the biggest leap defensively of anybody that consistently that's on this team from last year.
And how about Nasir Little? He's
so
really going too.
Nas is I love the guy. He is a giant ball of energy, and that's what they're kind of using him for. And actually, Chauncey has asked him to be the guy that works harder than anybody else on the floor, because like we've talked about, there's only so many guys who can get shots on this team, and the 4 guards are going to eat up the lion's share. So Nas is flat out told me, hey, if we're in transition, that's my green light. That's my ball. Get out of the way. Let me go eat. That's when I work. But in a half court on either end, on offense, defense, my job is to keep the ball moving offensively, take the right shot if it's there. I don't need to create. I've got other guys who can do that defensively, crash the glass, be a physical body, because he is strong. He is a strong kid. You will see him guard up. He's about 6'6", probably around 220, 225. He's thick. He's actually down a little bit. He picked up COVID last year, and it took him a long time to recover. He dropped about 25 pounds, and he got back up to where he was. He found he played a little bit better, a little bit lighter. So he actually dropped down to around 220, 225. But he's still
a big boy.
He's still a big boy, and he's got one heck of a wingspan. He's got about a 7'1" wingspan. He's long, he's strong, he's very explosive. He flips his hips really well. He can move with guys. He is rebounding incredibly well for the team so far on both ends. He is a guy that is just crashing the offensive glass on a nightly basis, and teams are having to just kind of slow down their break to keep him off, which has kind of been a fun little thing to watch, because he'll come in out of nowhere, and he's size and athleticism. He's probably their best athlete. If you talk about the rotation, Greg Brown the third. Yeah. Greg Brown the third, is a 6'9" and has got a 47-inch vertical, might beat him out in that regard. But as far as the regulars, Nas is that guy, and they rely on him a ton for that.
Yeah, you guys are out rebounding your opponents by almost 4 per game. So, and I'm sure he's contributing on that end. Let's talk about scheme overall. The Blazers live and die by the 3, literally. You're 4th in 3-point attempts per game in the league. and 23rd in 3-point attempts given up. So you give up you shoot 42 a game, and you give up almost 39 a game. And so far that's been about a wash as far as points. So is that contributing to the 5-5 record, or from behind the 3-point line? Do you think they're a plus, a minus? How do you think that's going on both ends?
So because Damon struggled, it's been a little bit hit or miss when guys like Ant has been on fire, Norm has been on fire, CJ started the year to be on fire, but he kind of cooled down for a couple games and figured it back out. But what has been consistently happening, and this actually happened in the Suns game, and I irritated some people in Portland because, hey, I said, listen, it was a fun win. They won by 30. You gave up about 20 wide open corner threes in that game that the Suns hit them in the first half. This is a very, very different game. And that has been their issue. They're giving up more corner threes than any team in the NBA, more corner wide open threes than anybody in the NBA,
Oh,
and more wide open threes
that's
than
the
any other
Suns'
team.
favorite shot, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, it's if you look at like the attack, if you look, looking at a shooting chart, just place an uppercase T straight down the middle and a line down the baseline to both corners. That's where the shots are coming from, and it tells you Portland's very weak at the point of attack because they have Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum still the point of attack. Chauncey did not change them to be great point of attack defenders. Now, they are doing a better job in some senses, staying with guys for another dribble or two to make the rotation a little bit easier, but they still aren't on the same page defensively. They're helping too early, or they're getting too deep, getting 2 feet into the paint on a help instead of one. And it's an issue. It's a major, major issue, is giving up those corner threes, because that getting beat at the point of attack has just been a major problem for them. And for Portland, they can get up threes, but they also need to make sure that they're getting their rim attempts. And that's kind of been neither here nor there at times. If Norman Powell's not getting there because Nurk either is 6 for 6 like he was the other night, or he's 6 for 16, and that's kind of been, and that honestly, Nurk's probably best defensive game this season was against Ayton in that first matchup, because Ayton has historically kind of given Nurk a little bit of issue because he's got the strength and the mobility to kind of to play with him.
Yeah, so just to Suns fans know this, but just in case you forgot, that was the second night of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights to start off the new season. The Suns really, from the Suns' point of view, that didn't really represent their best effort that game. So Portland, though, you talked about Yusuf Nurkic against DeAndre Ayton. Ayton is almost certainly going to be out for that game. He's been he bruised his knee after he had a 21-21 game and then a 17-12 game in the third quarter, and all of a sudden he knocked knees with somebody, and he's been almost out since. He played 1 game, kind of hobbled around.
Yeah.
So Monty Williams said the other day, Ayton's going to need a few days, a few games to get back to where he's playing without pain. So I don't expect Ayton. The injury report has not come out as of this recording, but I don't expect Ayton to be in there. What the Suns have been doing instead is JaVale McGee and Frank Kaminsky just kind of trying to play smoke and mirrors a little bit. They're not there skill wise, but they can do the hand thing and freak you out a little bit.
And McGee has hilariously just kind of punked Yusuf Nurkic throughout his career. It's been
Has
weird. Yeah. He just the rim, like Nurk is a big dude. He's not a vertical guy. So if you can, and again, Chris Paul can do this by just keeping that snake dribble alive and putting defenders in jail and that lob over the top, that has consistently haunted Yusuf Nurkic. If you want to talk about how to beat this Blazers team, it's to get in the pick and roll and put a defender in jail, because they don't have the length to trail defend, draw the big up and leave that backspace for a great point guard like Chris Paul. And it's either a corner 3 from the help, or a lob, or a backdoor cut for the finish of the rim. That's how you beat this team.
Well, let's hope. I want to ask you a question about Nurk. So we should be looking for that, Suns fans. That was a really good point, Danny. Is how's Chris Paul handle the use of Nurkic defense with his mix and match centers? Tell me about Nurkic with the new way the refs are calling fouls. Is he benefiting, or is he getting hurt?
He's benefiting on the defensive end. He is allowed to be as physical as he wants to be. I believe he's 5th in the league in deflection.
That's what's made functional defensively. Is he's not getting called fouls with using his body, and that's the only thing he can use is just his sturdy body.
Yeah, Nurk's 7 foot 300 pounds. Like, he's a massive. Like, when you talk about big guys in the NBA, he's in that super heavyweight division. It's him,
Mhm.
it's Boban, it's Joel Embiid, Andre Drummond. Nurk is a truck. And so if you allow him to be a truck, he's very effective. Like I said, I think he's like fifth in the league, fifth or sixth right now. I have to look at the updated stats in deflections because they've got him playing up higher. They aren't running drop coverage as much this year. So he's playing up at the free throw line, which is
Well,
part of
that's
the reason why
interesting.
so many corner threes are happening is because he's up there and then the rotation
And then
comes.
somebody
And
has
then,
to come down to protect the rim. Yep.
but, and I got to give a shout out to Mike Richmond here, who's a buddy of mine who covers the team here locally. You can be a bad team that doesn't get turnovers, or you can be a bad team that gets turnovers and gets a little bit of it back. And so their defense is a bad team that gets turnovers from time to time now. Now, they're really poor at turning them into consistent points. They're a terrible transition team, but they're a little bit more disruptive. So it's like,
Yeah.
I guess, sure, cool, we'll go with this. The trade-off is that Yusuf Nurkic, like we said, is 7 foot 300 pounds, and he is playing less minutes because they're asking him to do more in a shorter span, because be more aggressive defensively, get more involved offensively. He's playing closer to 24 minutes than he is closer to 30 minutes. So he's had a couple,
So
I
who's
think
playing behind him when he doesn't play?
Zeller or Nance. And that's
Gotcha.
Zeller has been incredibly reliable. He will, that man has already had stitches 3 times this year. Has a broken nose. You'll see him with a mask. Andre Iguodala broke that in the preseason. But he's been incredibly reliable, sets incredibly good screens, probably the best screen setter in the NBA, not even remotely
Cody
kidding.
Zeller is the quietest good player in the league, I think.
Yeah, he just does everything he does is like as an average or above average level. And it's just, it's very welcoming to have that consistent level. And that's what made that bench unit really good. They've gone small with Larry Nance Jr. The games that they've made somewhat of a comeback in, it's because Larry Nance Jr. is at small ball center. And it allows them to play a very, very different brand of basketball on both ends. They can switch across some more things. They still haven't run out the lineup that I think a lot of people want to see, which is Nasir Little, Robert Covington, Larry Nance Jr. in the front court, to allow them to get basically their 3 best and most flexible defenders on the floor at once, because it does limit them a little bit offensively with shot creation, especially with Dame struggling. If Dame was on his normal heater, you could probably get away with that and do some things. But for the most part, yeah, that's kind of how I think that big rotation has been, is that you've got, yes, Nurkic is playing less, but I think he's being more effective, or not even necessarily more effective, just you feel his presence more, because he does have a tendency to kind of to go up and down. He's either very good or very bad. And if you can keep his motor running and for a shorter period, I think you get a little bit more out of him.
So the weird thing about early season stats, we're 10 games in roughly, just about all the teams have played 10 games, and that's out of 82 this time. And so things are up and down. Like you said, there's been some 30-point wins, like the one over the Suns. There's been some 30-point losses. What's weird is you look at the basketball reference stats. I've always been a basketball reference fan. The Blazers so far at 5-5. Their projected one loss is only 6-4, meaning they're Pythagorean. So numbers wise, they should just be one game better than that. They've had the 6th toughest strength of schedule according to Basketball Reference version of looking at strength of schedule, and they're one of the better simple rating systems, 7th overall. Do you think the 5-5 is the right record for the Blazers, or do you think it should be better or worse?
I actually think it should be probably a little bit worse. I think they've gotten away. I think they've gotten away with a couple games. Phoenix and Memphis in particular, they ended up running away with both those games. But I thought in both first halves, Portland was atrocious defensively. But as you said, with Phoenix, it was 3 and 4 nights on a back-to-back. They gave all that effort into beating the ever-living hell out of the Lakers the night before.
They did.
They went in.
So fun.
Yeah, and then you could tell it was. They probably, let's be honest, LA nightlife undefeated. You probably, take a little extra time before you get into Portland. I get it. That's how it goes. That's very normal. And so when I saw that on the schedule, I was like, Phoenix is not coming in here like 100%, especially after that game. And everybody got, this Portland team's for real. I'm like, did you watch the tape? Because they gave up a lot of threes. And that has been their Achilles heel. It has been a nightmare defending the 3-point line. But because there's so much volatility in the 3-point game, Portland can get away from some stuff. I mean, they went on the 3-game road trip against Charlotte, Cleveland, and Philly, and they got waxed. I mean, they got absolutely hammered on that road trip. They played 2 quarters of viable basketball against Charlotte, and that was it. And it was like, oh no. And that's the other thing. This Blazers team, they have won on the road, and they've looked very bad on the road. Their one absolute, like you said, pantsing was by the Clippers in LA, and they will play the Clippers for the 3rd time and the last time
Oh,
on this
geez.
same trip.
Oh,
So
Lord.
yeah, it's been a bit of a weird schedule, but um they have a lot of things they need to work on. I like to say that they're siloed in the sense that the things that they're good at, they're really good at. The things that they're bad at, they're very bad at. There's not this variance, and that's why I think
Hmm.
those raw counting stats, when they add up, they look better than they probably are. Because when they're good at stuff, they're very good at it. But as we saw when they got absolutely smashed by the Clippers, and they've been smashed a couple times now, to be honest, um, they fall apart. And that's the thing, is that you're getting these big swings as opposed to these little swings. And
Hmm.
I'm it's very easy to say, well, if Dame, sure, but if Dame is his normal self, are you getting the bench shooting the way that they're shooting? If Dame is his normal self, is Norman Powell shooting 50, 40, 90 and giving you all the things that he's done? And that's the thing, is like, yes, Dame being better is good, because this Portland offense has
Hmm.
struggled, and they're still, I think, 6th or 7th in the league. So considering Damian Lillard having the worst 10-game stretch of his entire career, and they're still this good offensively, you're good on that end. The other end, while they've improved, that's where the variance really, really falls in. And I think um, without Dame there to buoy them, they're lucky that they're 5-5.
Yeah, this is quite interesting. I'm really curious to see what happens on Wednesday night. So, basically, what the takeaways I'm getting here for folks that want to, TLDR kind of this whole podcast basically is, here's what you got to do when you're watching Suns Blazers on Wednesday night. Look at behind the 3-point line.
Mm-hmm.
The Suns all year have been a net negative behind the 3-point line, like crazy, stupid net negative. Suns are not shooting them like they were a year ago, and they're not making. They're certainly and they're giving up a lot more than they were a year ago. The Blazers love the 3-point line. So guess what? I'm guessing if the Blazers are over 45 attempts behind 3-point line, the Blazers are going to win this game. If the Blazers are under 45, it's going to be a lot tighter of a game, because then the Suns have to get over 35 attempts. You can't get killed behind the 3-point line,
Yeah.
especially by a Blazers team, and you have to kill the Blazers for the defense they're playing. So when you say Blazers are giving up a lot of corner threes, well, by God, if the Suns don't get a bunch of corner threes out of it, they're not making the most of the opportunity. So the Suns have to get high 30s on 3-point attempts, if not more, and they've got to be about even on attempts, and keep that part of the game not the reason you lose. And then another key to the game is, what does the combination of JaVale and Frank do against Yusuf Nurkic? Does Nurkic get 30 and 20 just because he's so darn big, and you can run over people with no foul calls? What I thought was really interesting is Frank did a great job. Frank Kaminsky did a great job against Jonas Valanciunas, who's another one of the big boys in the league,
Mm-hmm.
because Jonas was expecting foul calls and throwing the ball away from himself, hoping to draw the foul as if he was being shot,
It's not
and the
happening
foul
anymore.
wasn't coming. So now that guys are starting to adjust, they're just going to truck the defender as much as the defender is holding their
Mm-hmm.
ground. So it's going to start being a bloodbath a little bit down there. So I'm really curious to see how Yusuf does against the mix and match and the smoke and mirrors of JaVale McGee and Frank Kaminsky. And that's it. Around the rim and behind the 3-point line. Shocker. But the Blazers can kill you if you don't win the 3-point line contest, and they can kill you even more if you also let Yusuf go crazy. So that's what I think is keys to the game for
Yeah.
you. Danny, what do you think are the keys, that any other keys besides what I mentioned?
Uh, Taking advantage of Portland's lack of size. And I know the Suns aren't this enormous team, but they are
Mhm.
bigger than Portland. Book is bigger. Bridges is bigger. Crowder is bigger. Like, when they get stuck in those cross matches, if they go small, keeping Portland away from those 4-guard lineups, or keeping 3 guards on the floor at any given time. Portland wants to do that, because we talked about that's their best players. Their best scorers are all 6'3", 6'4", guards. So if you can punish them physically, that probably it kind of elevates Phoenix's chances, and I think in any game against, or any opponent against Portland, if you're more physical with them, because they've really shown that they don't like that for the most part. The other part of this is the point of attack. If you can break Portland down without actually having to move the ball early, you're in for a good night. Because if it's straight dribble drive and you're collapsing and breaking down this defense, it's going to collapse in on itself, and you will have any look that you want. So the less effort you have to put into your offense to break this Portland defense down, if it's effective, then you can get deeper into the bag, and that's where I think Portland really starts struggling, is when teams are feeling themselves and getting downhill quickly and putting them on their heels because their rotations are slow. They don't really trust each other yet, and they don't really have the consistent effort there to really finish it out.
Well, thank you so much, Danny. I really appreciate your time today. Tell us where we can find you. You guys really should be following Danny.
If you guys want any other additional Blazers content, Jacked Ramses is the podcast that I host. It's hosted on Blazers Edge. We also do a live pre and post game show on YouTube at youtube.com/Danny Marang. And then that's with my co-host Brandon Sprague. And then we also put together somewhat weekly breakdown videos I'm actually putting together. It's kind of funny you mentioned the statistical analyst, the analytical side of it. Just kind of taking a look at the growth of both the young guys and Anthony Simons and Nasir Little. So if you like getting a little bit more insight on young guys in the NBA, something that we're trying to focus on a little bit more. But yeah, just search Jacked Ramses, and yes, it's Jacked Jacked Ramses. Shout out Ian Carmel,
awesome,
for the name for the show. But yeah, appreciate the support, man.
All right. Thank you. My name is Dave King. You can find me at Dave King NBA on Twitter. You can find my writing at brightsideofthesun.com. And if you haven't shared this podcast with other folks, please share it. Get the more people get a listen to Danny, the better. We are going to play the Blazers. The Suns are going to play the Blazers on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Phoenix time. And we're looking forward to the game. Thank you again, Danny.
Hey, anytime.